Hello, everyone. I think I'm live now. I was talking to myself. I just found out I've been talking to myself. Welcome, welcome, and thank you all for joining us today for Conversations with Go On Girl Book Club. Yes, we are here and we are live. Now I can see that we are live. I am C. Renee Washington, and I am welcoming Devon Franklin. So he will be joining in just a moment. But we are so excited to bring you our second in a series of conversations with Audible, the world's largest producer and retailer of audiobooks and other audio entertainment. This year marks our 31st year as an organization. Book created is in makes the reader level that's being medium. Today, we will be in conversation with award-winning producer, New York Times bestselling author, and renowned motivational speaker, Devon Franklin, and we'll be discussing the much talked about and already one of my favorite Audible originals, It Takes a Woman, which is available exclusively from Audible. It's an incredible listening experience narrated by Mr. Franklin, his mother, and 5 of his aunts. So let me see if I can bring him on. Okay. Okay, he should be coming on at any moment. And as they are coming on,
Hey, hey,
yes! Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to
we
see
did
you.
it. How's it going?
It's going great. It's going great. It's so
Good.
wonderful to see you. I'm just in the midst of your long and wonderful resume. So let me tell the people a little bit more about you.
Okay, okay, sounds
All
good.
right. Okay. So Devon was named by Variety as one of the top 10 producers to watch and by Oprah as a different kind of spiritual leader. Devon Franklin is a Hollywood producer and New York Times bestselling author, blazing his own unique trail with an unwavering commitment to uplifting the human spirit through entertainment. Devon serves as president and CEO of Franklin Entertainment, a dynamic production company that has first look deals with Paramount Pictures and CBS TV studios. He's the driving force behind some of Hollywood's most successful inspirational films, including Breakthrough, Miracles from Heaven, and the soon to be released movie Flamin' Hot for Disney. I just love that title. Plus the TV series Kingdom Business, which I have been binging on
Nice.
BET. In addition to his work as a producer, Devon is also the author of multiple best-selling books such as The Success Commandments and the new Audible original, which we're going to be talking about in just a few minutes, It Takes a Woman, which is a deeply personal look into the tragedy that transformed his family's life forever. Devon serves the greater Hollywood community at large as vice president of the board of governors for the Academy of Motion Pictures, Arts, and Sciences. And he is a graduate of the the University of Southern California, and you live in Los Angeles.
Wow. I can't, thank you. You didn't have to read all that, Renee. You have to read all that.
I was happy to read it. Your
Oh,
family.
thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Let me tell you, this has been such a great assignment for me because, any book can be an audio book. But for me, It Takes a Village is definitely best experienced as through listening. So I'm curious, was it your idea to have your mom, these queens, your mom and your aunts tell their own stories versus you're just, telling their stories yourself? Whose idea was
Yeah,
that?
no, it was thank you first of all for having me and thank you for the question. Yeah, it was my idea. I when they approached me about doing it, once I started to wrap my head around, because Audible approached me, it wasn't my original idea. And then once they approached me, I started to think about it. I said, "Oh, okay, yeah, I'd love to tell my story." And then if I'm going to tell my story, then let me bring in the women in my family that play such a pivotal role in my story. And so I went to them. I went to my mom, went to my great aunts, and said, "Would you all want to do this?" And they said, "Yeah. How much you gonna pay us?" And we negotiated a fair deal, I hope. And then they were very open to participate, but it was a very organic process.
Well, listen, I will admit I was surprised. I love hearing people's stories because I do believe we all have a story. But what did surprise me most about this book was how much I was able to connect to it. And
Mm,
I really believe that anyone who listens to this audio book and you don't find yourself in it, you ain't living. You know, seriously,
that's it.
these stories are so powerful because as if you're an aunt, daughter, friend, mom, brother, I don't care, you employee, uh there are so many points of connection, and I was
Mm,
just so um in awe of their vulnerability in what they shared, and in your vulnerability in what you shared as to how their lives impacted yours. So what surprised you most when you were listening to them tell their stories? What did you learn anything new? And I don't want to tell all the stories because I want everybody to listen to this book, but
yeah.
what surprised you the most?
It's a blessing to be able to do this book, It Takes a Woman, because the things that surprised me while doing It Takes a Woman was the level of just what's the word, like the way that I did the book in terms of the production of it will articulate how I was surprised. So I did individual interviews with my mother and my five great aunts. The youngest is 90, the youngest is 75, the oldest is 95. And so I interviewed them and I read them the introduction as a icebreaker, and then I asked them different questions. And it shocked me that my entire life I've had access to them, but it wasn't really until doing this project that I really asked them about their story and their experience. And the surprising factor was how much emotion, how much regret, remorse, how optimistic. I mean, just the truth of their journey was so surprising. I just, you take your family members for granted. And a lot of times you're just like, oh, that's, my grandma or my aunt or my uncle, but you don't realize that that's actually an experience, a life experience that we can draw from. So I was just surprised at the level of candor, the level of comfort, the level of transparency that they were all so willing to display. And I think that, the impact that it's had on you as a listener and other listeners, the impact is directly related to their desire and willingness to be transparent and to open up their hearts. And in that, once I did those interviews, I had to go back and change the entire book because the interviews were so deep.
Mm-hmm.
I had to go back and rewrite the entire book, and then I got more transparent too. And so what you ultimately have in the "It Takes a Woman" audiobook is an experience that was very organic, but we use transparency as our kind of guiding light.
Oh yeah, yeah. And so as I said, I don't want to tell all the stories. Every one of them, I just gave me pause because it they share the truth of life in each of those stories. But I do want to ask you if you are willing to share your mom's story about the end of your dad's life. Your dad's story is just as powerful. It was just, oh, it just broke my heart.
Yeah,
What he went through and what you all went through as a family. So I'm about to tear up now. so
it's all right.
will you share your mom's story about your dad's death in what happened in the hospital? Will you share that
Yeah,
story?
yeah. My mother, my father. I'm the middle child of three boys, and my mother and father, met when they were teenagers. It was almost love at first sight, and they got married in their like early 20s, and had my older brother when they were 22, and me when I think my mom was like 25, almost 26, and then my youngest brother when she was like 29, almost 30, and and the thing about them was that, they were living at first a great life. Moved out to the suburbs of the Bay Area in a city called Pleasanton, California. Had the house, had the car, living that American dream, so to speak. And my father started as a truck washer working for UPS in Hayward, California. And, very charismatic, hardworking, and was started to rise the ranks very fast. And he ultimately got into a management position at that particular UPS location. One of the things that they would do during lunch sometimes is they would do these things they call liquid lunches,
Mm,
which basically means they would go drink for lunch. Now, for the average person, that may not be an issue. But the problem was that my father did not realize was that because he was raised by two alcoholics, his mother and his father were alcoholics. He did not realize that there was an issue lying dormant within him. Alcoholism isn't so much a disease that's hereditary, but it's more environmental. So
mhm,
if you are brought up in an environment where there's an addict or an alcoholic, the research says that then you're predisposed to be an alcoholic or an addict yourself. And so my father didn't know that. And he started participating in the liquid lunches and drinking, and just that was just part of what they did. It was a part of him doing his job, so to speak. But he couldn't handle it. And so sometimes he would drink and he would be so drunk that my mother had to come from work. There were other times when, it got so bad he would not be able to make it to work the next day. There were other times he would leave. My mom wouldn't know where he would be. There'd be other times she'd come home, and on the way home from work, she'd hear this loud music playing, and she knew that he had been home drinking. Didn't know what she was going to get. So, that was our experience until eventually alcoholism completely took
mm,
over his life to the point where he lost his job. We lost our house. My mother and my father split up, and me and my brothers and my mom moved in with my grandparents in Richmond, California, in their two-bedroom house. We all slept in the same bed, me and my brothers and my mother, on welfare. Because my mom didn't have enough money to take care of us. And during that period of time, my father was just out in the streets, doing odd jobs, just to get enough money to drink, and that was pretty much his life. And he would come back into the house and come visit us occasionally, but predominantly we were, at that time without a father. So long story short, By the time I'm 9 years old, my mother has gotten an apartment for us. She's working. We're off welfare. She's pulled herself up from her bootstraps, so to speak. And my father has sobered up by that point in time, and he's working at a restaurant in Oakland, California, and he's living in the back of the restaurant. And we started to reconnect with him, and he was really trying to make amends and get the family back together. And he said he wanted to get back into church and all that. And the year when I was 9 years old, which was 1988, he had a heart attack. This was his third heart attack. And the doctor told my mother they didn't think he was going to make it because this was the third heart attack that he had had. His heart was in bad condition, and they didn't know that he was going to survive this. And my father had a conversation with my mother on his at the time did not know, but on his deathbed, saying that he had this vision of he could see that he had already died, and they put the paddles on his chest and tried to bring him back. And so my mother called his parents and said, listen, I don't know that he's gonna be here much longer. You need to get down here. And so while his parents came to the hospital to see him, my mother left to go get us because we were at the house coming home from school. And so we get to the house. I mean, we're at the house waiting on mom. Mom gets there. She's just, changing her clothes, and we're about to get into the car to go back to the hospital. What happens? The phone rings. My mother yells. Me and my brothers know what that means. My father has died.
Yeah.
And so we rush to the hospital. We pick up my Aunt Sandra along the way. We get to the hospital. And my mother leaves us with Aunt Sandra in the lobby in the waiting room for a while. And then she comes to get us. And she walks us to what I didn't know at the time. I didn't know what it was, but I come to understand now was the morgue at the hospital. And she walks us to the morgue, and she says, kiss your father goodbye. And there's my father, laid out on the table. And I talk about this in the book that you don't know what cold is until you've experienced the cold of death. And in that moment, everything in our lives changed forever in that moment. And so I detail this in the book. And my mother talks about her point of view of feeling that she had lost the love of her life, feeling a little bit of regret. How come she couldn't have helped him more? She tried. My dad tried. I mean, there were times when he went to therapy. He got his jaws wired shut to try to stop drinking, and for whatever reason, it did not work. And so that's one of the reasons why to this day I don't drink. It's just not something that I want to have in my life. It's not something that I have ever done. And I did a post a few days ago with the clip from the book talking about how alcoholism destroyed my mother's marriage.
Yes.
His marriage destroyed their love. It disrupted it. And I think sometimes, for some people can do it, but I treat substances very, very seriously. Very seriously. And it's just not something that I want. I don't judge anyone who chooses otherwise. That's fine. But for me, I'm trying to, start something new in my family, especially on the side of my father. I'm trying to start something new where, substance abuse is not a part of our experience, not a part of our story. So, growing up, people called me all kind of names and, ridiculed me and, oh, you're goody two shoes and you're a square and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, it's okay. You can talk about me that way when you don't know what I've been through. You don't know the pain of seeing your mother cry herself to sleep because the love of her life is gone. Why? Because the bottle took him out on some
Yes.
level.
And
So anyway,
I think that was the part that was particularly heartbreaking for me as I was listening when you talked about how hard your father tried, that he really tried, and that, at the point of his death, he thought he had made a turn for better, and he had promised, that the family was going to get back together. And
yeah,
then, and listening to your mom talk about having left and wishing that she hadn't left, oh my gosh, it's just yeah, it is just heartbreaking to
oh yeah,
listen to that. And also so amazing because, as we all know, that we have decision points, right? We're
yeah,
at these crossroads. And so, like you just talked about, making this choice to go this way instead of that way.
that's right.
Because
That's right.
yes, and you wanted to break that cycle. And so, that is very powerful. And as I was listening, I was also wondering about your brothers, and because all three of you are successful, which is pretty incredible.
Yeah,
Yeah, when you think about
it
what
is.
what you went through.
Yeah.
And so, what is their take on it takes a woman, and their point of view on, because everybody experiences the same thing differently. So
Yeah. Yes. They are grateful, that their story and our story would be memorialized in some way or canonized in some way through this project. And so they've listened to it, and they also acknowledge that it's a miracle that all three of us were able to um, make it on some level and be successful. And they have families, and my older brother's been married for, I think almost 20 years at this point, two daughters. My younger brother's been married for very long time and two sons. And my younger brother's in ministry, my older brother's in marketing, and everyone has been doing relatively well, and that's a testament to my mother, my great aunts, and also I think that when you go through tragedy and trauma so young, I think it either puts you on a path where you decide I don't ever want to be anything like that, or it
hmm
puts you on a path where you become exactly like it.
yeah, yeah,
And for us, we all made the same commitment that we weren't going to drink. We just said, you know what, we're not drinking. We just want to. We don't want that to be a part of our lives. So my brothers, we don't do that. And I think that having had exposure at such a young age to so much pain, and heartbreak and heartache, it does something to you. It reminds you that life is fun. Don't get me wrong, but life is serious too.
yes,
And I
yeah,
think that us having that experience so young, I think it created a desire to be successful, a desire to not succumb to the same demons that got my father, and and a desire to do good in the world on some level. And thankfully, all of us are doing that in our own way. So they're very proud of the project. They're very excited about it and grateful, and they acknowledge that it's a miracle that we are all, we have beat the odds. We could have been a statistic. We're not, and we're just grateful for what God has done and
yeah.
what He's doing.
Yeah, and I also think it speaks to uh knowledge and timing, because you came along in a time where we have so much more information about substance abuse, alcoholism. Your dad, as you speak about, he came from a family environment, but then it was accepted. That's what people did. And so do you think that may be part of why his struggle may not have been successful, because we have a different type of support now than he may have had during that time too?
I think that's part of it, and I also think that we all have our issues and our vices and things so each one of us has trauma
Right,
that's probably unprocessed.
right.
And a lot of times that the level of our dependence or on a vice, or to the degree that we seek a vice out to alleviate pressure, to find some sort of relief, is relative, I believe, to the trauma inside of us that's not yet processed.
Mm, mm,
So I think that now we can talk about trauma. I think growing in his day, they probably weren't talking much about it. So the idea that he had this maybe predisposition for alcoholism because of the environment he grew up in, and then that started to take hold of his life, I think that maybe he was just focusing on the act, but not the trauma that was fueling the act, right? Because
exactly.
sometimes the drinking is just a symptom of a larger, more significant traumatic problem that we haven't dealt with.
Yeah, it's the
And
end game.
so
Yes.
that's right. So I think that nowadays there's more help to talk about what you're going through and to get more resources. So but I think a lot of it has to do with not processing the trauma underneath. And I do believe anytime that we're numbing, it fights with who we're becoming.
Oh,
And I think my father,
okay.
whatever
Okay.
abuse.
If we're numbing, it fights who we're becoming. We need to
That's
repeat
right.
that. Say that again.
That's right.
Yes.
Yes, I believe that. If we're numbing, If we're using a substance to numb how we feel, then I believe it fights with who we're becoming. I believe that.
Yes.
Because I think that a lot of times we don't want to experience the pain of whatever that trauma is, so we try to find things to take us out of the pain. But in the long run, depending on the level of vice, those things then create more pain. I mean, think about this. You and I, Renee, are having this conversation, and literally my entire life has been disrupted because potentially of the pain that my father was unwilling to process. And as a result, turned to the vice as a way to alleviate whatever that pain was. And that vice contributed to an early and tragic demise. You see how profound that is when we have issues and challenges that we don't deal with. They don't just affect us, they could affect
There's a
entire
ripple.
generations.
There's a ripple.
So
Absolutely.
this is why I wanted to do this book. I wanted to do It Takes a Woman for this very reason. We've got to start talking about what we've been through. We have to start acknowledging our traumas, because every time we acknowledge a trauma, we set ourselves up for triumph. And so the book is a triumph, because here are all these women in my family that stepped in to help me and my brothers to say, you know what, we're not going to let them become a statistic, and we're going to teach them how to speak about how they feel and teach them how to address what they're feeling and what's going on as a way to help them heal. So anyway, I just feel like there was so much that my father, had he had the resources, probably could have done, and maybe he could have overcome it. But now it's on to me and my brothers to do the work that he couldn't do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so I do want to pause right here and have you call the names of these queens that raised you.
Yes.
You share your
Yes.
mom, your aunt's names.
Yeah, I'll share them, and I'm also going to show them. I think I got a box with their pictures on it. Hold on.
Oh, good. Wonderful. Yes. Because they are gorgeous.
Let's see. Y'all see them. I'm in my office. My office is a little messy, but whatever. Hold on. Hold on. Let me do this. 2 seconds, Renee. I'll be right back. Here
No,
we go.
no. Good. Good.
All right. So let's see here. Okay, that's me and my mother. Okay, that's Paulette.
Okay.
This right here is Aunt Donna. That's Aunt Nuna. She's the matriarch. She's 95. That's Aunt Ida. That's Aunt Sandra. And that's Aunt Enos.
Oh, yes.
And
And
this is the whole contingent. There you go.
just
It takes a
incredible.
woman.
Yes. Yes. And I so love that you did this, and thank you for doing this, because yes, I'm a Black woman, obviously, um,
Yeah.
old enough to be your mama, and and I so love us. I so love us, and I also know that we are not, as Black women, we are not acknowledged in the way that we deserve to be acknowledged,
That's
and
right.
that's why It Takes a Woman, for me, is a testament. It's a tribute. It's an honor, because you are speaking specifically about the women in your life, and again, to me, it is representative of
Mm,
Black women as a collective. And
yeah,
so, you know,
absolutely.
yes, and I loved listening to them. And your Aunt Donna, she has. I'm a quote woman, so you have to live it to learn it.
Live it to
And
learn. That's
yes,
it.
live it to learn it. Just such truth and wisdom that they all have. And you talked about transparency, and I think, was it Aunt Donna that said transparency leads to transformation? I
Right.
you know yes, just powerful wisdom, because with Black women, we're seen as magical, or hanks. It's just like, it's just bad. It's just either bad, one extreme or the other. But what you see, through the narrative of It Takes a Woman, is that we are complex.
That's right.
Your mom and your aunts, they have very complex stories.
That's right. That's right.
And yes, and so talk a little bit about, what that was able to teach you, as far as how the those quotes that I've mentioned, how that informed who you became. You know, the transparency, the living it to learn it, and they're the complexity of seeing them not as this or that, but as on a continuum.
Yeah, you know, I mean, Renee, it's one of those. It's interesting that comment or that quote. You know, you have to live it to learn it. That's certainly something Donna has said my entire life, and it really isn't. It probably hasn't been until now where I really understand what she has meant and what she's been saying all my life. Because sometimes, in my experience, um, the learning of life sometimes has been intellectually, right? And there's nothing wrong with learning intellectually, right? Okay, cool. But sometimes, you know, if we don't learn practically, we don't really learn at all.
Exactly.
It's reading about riding a bike, but you never ride the bike.
Hello.
So you may intellectually know how to ride a bike, but until you get on that bike, you don't know what to do. You fall, how you handle that, how do you get back up, how do you get back on the bike? And so the idea of living life to learn it, living it, not being afraid. And see what happened is, you know, I was raised in the church. And so, you know, being raised in the church, a lot of times there's a caution about living life. Live but to a point. Be afraid, you know, caution, danger. And as a result, that created in a mindset in me of not really living, you know, like living to a point, but not
Right.
really experiencing what is this thing called life,
Right.
and who am I in this thing called life, and who is God in this thing called life. And a lot of times we don't really know until we experience it, until we experience life and say, oh, wow, I learned what I want to do, what I don't want to do. I learned what I'm not going to do again. You know, it's like there's so many things. And so I'm a huge proponent of what Donna was saying about living life, live it to learn it. And in the living of life comes the appreciation of life.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I wrote in my last book that there would be no worse testimony to me than you and I get to the end of our life and realize we never lived. We were
Amen.
afraid. We were too worried. What are people going to say? You know, what is the church going to say? What is my family going to say? You know, what if I fail? What if, what if, what if? We can what if our entire life away.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
I, you know, that quote by Aunt Donna that's in the It Takes a Woman book, I was like, you know, yeah, I've got to start learning how to live life. I've got to live life. I've got to live it. I don't want to get to the end and say, what if? No, any what if I may have now, then that may be something I need to explore to understand what that means to me, and be okay with my reaction to that as it relates to my relationship with God. Like a lot of times in my experience, a lot of times people want to live for everybody else and say, "Oh, well, is this person going to approve or disapprove?" And it's like,
Mhm.
you got to walk certain things out between you and God and yourself, so that
Yeah.
you really know who you are and you really know what this life is supposed to be for you. What works for me may not work for you. What works for you may not work for me. But when I have lived life and I'm learning life, then I can be more compassionate, not only with myself, but with you. I think a lot of people are really judgmental. Why?
Why?
Because they judge themselves.
Exactly.
They're not, I believe a lot of people, if you are judgmental, in the moments when I have been judgmental, and there have been times I have been judgmental,
All of
it's
us.
because I'm judging myself and I'm
Absolutely.
not happy myself. So
And
if I
judging,
can't,
and judging yourself probably filtered through the lens of what I call OPP, other people's perceptions. It's like a boomerang.
that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. No, absolutely.
Yeah.
Other people's perceptions, you know, and so if I'm pointing the finger at you and saying, "Oh, you shouldn't do this and you shouldn't do that," and who does this person? What happens is that it's really revealing how much I judge me.
Mm-hmm.
When I live life and I learn myself, I have more compassion
Mm-hmm.
because just like riding that bike, you're going to fall down. No one gets upset when a kid falls down. It's part of the process.
Exactly.
So, you know, in life, I've learned and I'm learning this is not about getting through life perfectly. That's impossible. It's about getting through life truthfully. And
Yes.
the more compassion I can have for me, I can offer that to you. The less I judge myself, the less I'm going to judge you. And the more that I live life and learn it and appreciate it, the greater appreciation I can have for you. So that's a long answer to your question, but that's how that one idea has really impacted my life in a positive way.
Yes, yes. And I do want to because I saw somebody in the comments say, is there a book? Yes, there is an audio book. You must go to Audible to get It Takes a Woman by Devon Franklin. So yes, there absolutely is a book. And so yes, so from based on what you just said and that long list of accomplishments that I read at the beginning, so one of the questions I like to ask people is who are you? Because you have a lot of roles, you have a lot of titles, Devon. But who is Devon without role or title? Who are you at your
Yeah.
essence?
Yes, and I don't have the answer to that question. That's an answer that I am absolutely exploring, and it isn't until this moment in my life, like I've had an awareness
Mm-hmm.
that the titles and all those things aren't me per se,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but articulating who I am, the one who is experiencing all of this, that's something I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I'm working on getting a better understanding of who is
Yeah.
the person inside of me that is
Yeah.
experiencing all of this, that's
Yes.
doing all of this. Who is he, right? Because even if you really want to get esoteric or whatever, it's like our parents gave us these names.
Right.
Who am I really? You know what I mean? Like, and do I even have a name? Do you even have a name? The you that's experiencing your life, right?
Yes.
Who
Yes.
is that person? That's
Yes.
like a lifelong commitment to understand who is this one that is having this experience called life, and who is this one that is trying to understand what all this means. And I am clear enough to know that even with all the things and accolades you mentioned at the top, I don't define myself by those things. I don't.
Mm-hmm.
I really have gotten out of the business of how people perceive me and what titles they assign to who I am. It's not my concern. I'm clear on how I want to be presented in the world. And I'm also clear that people are going to have their points of view on that
Yes.
and their point of view. I've learned an idea called the separation of tasks, right? So how you perceive me is not my task.
So
How
true.
I live is my task.
Yeah.
Me doing what I'm called to do is my task. How you perceive those things is on you. So there was a period of time in my life where I found all of my value in everything that I did. So all the things you listed at the beginning, the movies and the books and all this kind of stuff, I was finding my value in that. So if I wasn't doing a book or I wasn't doing a movie, I would be like, oh God, what's going on in my life and all of that. And God really had to deal with me on that. Really had to deal with me on that to say, wait a minute. So you need these things to prop up your own self-esteem? You need
Mm.
these things to prop up to subsidize your self-worth? And so as I started to get into that, I said, well, no, I can feel comfortable being Devon Franklin, whether I have a movie out or not. I can feel great feeling being Devon Franklin, whether I even have a book or not, whether I have anything. I feel great about being Devon Franklin, whoever that may be, whoever that may be. And I'm not sitting here, Renee, telling you like, oh yeah, I can tell you exactly who I am. No, I don't. I don't
Yeah.
know. Well, I'm working on it. We're trying to see
Yeah.
every day. I'm learning,
Yeah.
experiencing, and trying to really have a better understanding of who I am and what it is I'm supposed to do in this thing called life.
Yes. Yes. Because we will say, it's the journey, but then we're always trying to get to some destination.
Yeah, I know. Oh, and that part, Renee, is the part that, if I'm being honest, I think it destroys us because we're always trying to get somewhere. We don't know where that is. We are outsourcing and delaying how we would feel now for a day that may come, may never come. And a lot of times when we were saying, oh, I can't wait to get there, you get there. And how you thought you would feel, you don't feel.
Feel it. And
And
then it's the
you're,
next thing. Yes. Yes.
you're right. You're devastated,
Yes.
so I am learning to live in the moment, enjoy this thing called life, and anything that I outsource, say, oh, if I had this type of movie that made that kind of money, I would feel this way. I try to feel that way now. Let me get in that joy now. Let me do that now. Let me get in the happiness now. because so often, we delay and defer happiness for a time that may never arrive. And if it does, it usually is disappointing. So it's all
Oh yeah,
about
that
now
that
and not
comes out
so focused
in your
on getting.
yeah, that comes out in your village stories. Your aunts and your mom, they speak to that very thing of being so caught up in a thing. Like I said, I don't want to give away the stories because I really want everybody to listen to the
Yeah.
stories. But they speak, so many of their stories connect to, at this time in my life, I thought this. Now that I can look back, I realize. And even some stories where there is regret has been um, expressed, and also acceptance of, that's where I was then, this is where I am now, and I can't go back and change the past, but I am going to do all that I can do now. And
Yes.
yes, and
Yes,
that
absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely. It's about now. It's about now. I mean, think about it. The future, in God, from God's vantage point, the future exists, but from our vantage point, it doesn't. The only thing that exists is the moment that we are having this
mm,
very moment.
mm,
So what are we going to do with it? What are we, and I go back to something I said earlier, because a lot of times in my experience, in a now moment, we squander it because we're so focused on the past.
yes,
Oh man, how did this happen? Why did this happen? How did I get here? Nothing wrong with asking those questions to sort out how to live in the now.
right,
But if every now moment is focused on where we came from or where we're going, we never get the benefit of this moment ever because we're
absolutely,
never in it.
absolutely,
So doing this book was a moment for me to be in it, to be present, to be in the now, to sift through the past as a way to better appreciate the moment that we currently have.
yes, yes. In listening to you, I find you to be a very optimistic person. In the audio, you talk about what you were taught about racism, who we are as Black people, and how we need to maneuver through the world, the lessons that your aunts and your mom taught you about that. And you talk about being someone who just works to show up in a way that can possibly impact the hearts and minds of people who may not be for us. uh and so I, as that relates to what we're going through now, are you still in that mode of that? Do you still believe that hearts and minds can be changed? And I know you're a pastor, so because I'm gonna tell you, Devon, I'm just a little over the hearts and minds. I'm just like, oh, can't is that really possible now? We just seem to be in such separation and division, and so, is that still a focus for you, or is it more about, okay, I'm just going to live the best that I can live and be an example? You can change or not change, but we're not going anywhere. Am I making sense in asking that
Yeah,
question?
yeah, no, no, I get it. I get it. I mean, and this is one area where I always get a little technical just to clarify.
Yeah,
See, I'm not a pastor, right? My younger
yeah.
brother went to theology school and got a, divinity degree and
Oh,
actually is a
okay,
professional pastor. Now I
okay.
preach,
I
I'm a
got
bootleg preacher here and
you.
there,
Okay,
okay?
all right, got you.
But as a pastor, I don't take that on because I
Okay,
don't have a local congregation that I'm responsible to.
all
I can
right,
just go preach and leave. Okay.
okay,
Me working at this company. This is Franklin Entertainment.
okay. I
This
got
is
you.
my day job. Running this production company. Um, um, and to the point that you're asking, can hearts and minds be changed? Of course, it can be changed.
Yeah,
And if you look at things scripturally, or through the word, there are things that have been prophesied that would happen, and that people's hearts would become hardened, and that there would be more division. And so, if we understand things from a theological standpoint or a spiritual standpoint, it may mitigate the surprise of the moment that we're living in. Doesn't make us desensitized, but it may say, oh, okay, some of these things were predicted they would come to pass. So what is my role in it, right? My
yes,
role, your role is to be light, to be love, to build community, to build family, to always work to change the heart and mind for the better. No matter what scripturally or prophetically has been said it's going to happen, we still have an responsibility to, occupy and to help and to change and to be the change that we want to see in the world. So as bleak as things can be and as difficult as the moments that we're facing, and there is so much division and there's so much doubt, um, I say, okay, that means that the need for good, the need for light, the need for love is that much greater.
Yes.
It's greater. So I don't get disenfranchised, and I personally don't get depressed when I see what's going on in the world. I just see that there are more opportunities for me to, try to make a difference, and for me to help, and for me to hope and provide maybe it's a positive word, or maybe it's a donation here, whatever it is. It's just like there are more opportunities to make a positive impact. And I think I don't ever want to get to the place where I'm so cynical
Yeah.
about life that I then lose my ability to do what I can to make a positive impact and a difference.
Okay. Okay. I'm with you. I'm with you. All right. Okay. All right. And so into that, to your strong faith, and you do have a strong faith and a faith practice. He's not a pastor, y'all. He's not a pastor, but he is.
I love the Lord.
Yes, love the Lord. We love the Lord. Yes. And so you have your new show, Kingdom Business. And yes, and so how does that represent for you, taking a stance on, a lot of people have moved away from organized religion for whatever reason, that's, so how do you feel that you can not change that or turn that around, but just what do you feel any kind of connection to, or any kind of role for, like you said, being an example for, um, you know, how you can impact that in a positive way? And have you gotten any kickback? Because kingdom business, it's edgy, it's real. So, have you gotten any
Yeah.
kickback from that, from the good church folk?
You know what? If somebody stops at the first episode, I've gotten kickback. But if someone
Okay.
watches the whole series through, they're like, okay, I get it.
Yes.
And yes, like part of, I believe, God's plan for giving me favor in the world of entertainment is to help bring, content that can be uplifting, redemptive on some level, and content that the world has never seen, through entertainment. So when you talk about Kingdom Business, which is a new show I executive produced for BET Plus, you can stream it right now. It's a show that deals with virtue and vice. It deals with what we all deal with every single day of our life.
Mhm.
Are we going to feed the spirit, or are we going to feed the flesh? And this series really articulates what happens when you do both. And
Mm.
so people, when they watch Kingdom Business, they are loving it. People want a season two. I'm believing we're going to get one. But yes, being able to make content to, show people the difference between virtue and vice, to help articulate the love of Christ, what that means, and to dramatize that in a real way from someone who was really broken in the series, who needed a relationship with Christ to find healing. So sometimes it's great to be able to have these opportunities to put content in the world that people can experience that content. They don't, it's like a sermon is like, okay, I'm going to teach you a lesson.
Yes.
But with movies and television shows, well, I'm going to tell you a story. And it's great to be able to have the opportunity to do this in entertainment.
Yes. Okay. Well, I have one more question for you. I could just keep talking to you. So, I don't,
Thank you, Renee. I appreciate it.
what do you want men, particularly Black men, to take away from "It Takes a Village"? Like I said, I absolutely connect to it as a Black woman. But what do you want Black men to take away from "It Takes a Village"?
You know, from It Takes a Woman.
I'm
uh,
sorry. It
that's
takes a.
okay.
I'm sorry.
That's
It
okay.
takes.
It's no problem. No problem at all. I know what you meant. I want to make
Yeah.
sure they knew it. I want Black men to take away a number of things. One, that when you listen to this book, it's okay for us as Black men to be transparent, to be emotional, to express emotion, to express our feelings. It's okay. It's okay. There is strength, there's transparency, and there's transformation in that transparency. And I think sometimes as Black men, we feel the pressure of living according to whatever the image of what a Black man is supposed to be. And each Black man has a different idea of what that is. And sometimes that idea fights with transparency and fights with vulnerability. There is victory in vulnerability. And I would encourage any Black man listening to this book, I would want them to take away that from them. Like, okay, wow, there's victory here. I can be vulnerable, and that's okay. The other thing is have a deep respect for every woman that you come in contact with. Even in a dating situation, you may be dealing with somebody and let's say it's just casual for you. That's okay. That's your choice. But still, you can be casual with respect.
Yes.
You can be casual with, here's my intent. Here's what I'm looking for. Here's where I'm going. Does that work for you? Versus, sometimes as men, we can become silent manipulators where we're manipulating every single situation and every person and every woman to get what it is we want and never being truthful, never being transparent. And I want men, when they listen to this book, to say, hey, you know what? I'm going to start being vulnerable. I'm going to start being truthful. I'm going to start respecting the women in my life enough to tell them the truth. Hey, if I'm dealing with you, I'm serious about you. I'm not serious about you. I'm looking for a good time. I'm looking to commit. Whatever it may be, communicate because you respect them that much. Don't just ghost somebody and just they leave them wondering whatever happened. Tell them, hey, now's not a good time. I'm sorry. You may not like to hear that, but I'd rather tell you the truth than to just, leave you and you never know what happened. So there's so many more things that I could say.
Yes.
But if
Yes.
a Black man listened to this and came out with a commitment to be more vulnerable and a commitment to respect every single woman that he comes in contact with, then I think it would make certainly a difference, not only in their lives, but in our culture and community.
Yes, and you do speak to that in It Takes a Woman. You talk about, that, how was it your grandfather or an uncle that,
My grandpa, yeah, tissue paper, yeah.
yes, it kind of make fun of your appreciation of, what you were being taught by the women in your life and your affinity for being around that, so yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yes, and they taught us a great deal of respect for women.
yes,
My grandfather would call us tissue paper and, because we were hanging with women and becoming soft, and we didn't see it that way. We're like, no, no, hanging with women in our family is actually making us stronger, not weaker.
yes, and I love that so much, and I love your level of introspection
Mm,
because yes, as women, we want a nice looking package. You definitely represent that, uh,
thank you.
but that ability to communicate and to be introspective and to be vulnerable is, is so important, so powerful, and it is it's what relationships are created from, and so those deep, long lasting relationships. So again, I just wanted to say a thank you for It
Yeah.
Takes a. Let me check really quickly before I let you go to see if there were any questions that I've missed. Uh,
Okay.
I think I've covered so much of, yeah. So I think,
All right.
yeah, I think and if there's anything else you want to share or say before I have to say goodbye.
Oh no, just thank you. Thank you and the Go Girl Book Club for having me and
Yeah.
Audible. I'm beyond grateful and incredibly appreciative.
Oh yes, okay, and it's a mutual thing, and so yes, Go On Girl Book Club absolutely appreciates your sharing this time with us, and again, to everyone listening, go to audible.com and download It Takes a Woman. You will not be sorry. So thank you, Devon.
Thank you, Renee. Take care. God
You take,
bless you.
all right, bye-bye. All right, thank you, everyone. I'm going to figure out how to save this, and we will be a wrap. think I'm going to figure out how to save it. Don't let me delete this.